In the quiet shadows of Charlotte, North Carolina, violence simmered beneath the surface like a storm waiting to break. Motorcycle clubs have long occupied a legendary space in American subculture, part brotherhood, part outlaw myth. But when bullets fly, legends turn real. On July 8, 2025, at approximately 2:09 a.m., shots rang out at the Outlaws Motorcycle Clubhouse in Newton, a city not far from Charlotte. When the gunfire stopped, two men were struck. One of them, identified later as Jordan Cassell, nicknamed Menace, would not survive his wounds. The shooter or shooters fled the scene, but a dark GMC Yukon was seen leaving the area. Authorities had only a few leads, but one of them pointed to a rival group, the Pagans Motorcycle Club. 3 weeks later, on August 1st, just before 4 a.m., the quiet of Lenoir, a small town near Charlotte, was shattered. Two SWAT teams, alongside agents from the State Bureau of Investigation, moved in with tactical precision on the Pagans Clubhouse along Highway 321. Explosions broke the morning stillness as flashbangs echoed through the neighborhood. Glass exploded from the windows and heavy boots thudded across the pavement as officers breached the property. Inside, they found firearms, surveillance DVRs, and a suspect, Anthony Lee Card. Already a convicted felon, Card was arrested and charged with possession of a firearm. But no murder charges were filed and questions lingered. Neighbors described the raid as terrifying. Betty Pittman, who lives just a block away, said she and her grandchildren were startled awake by the explosions and the lights. Pete Walser, another neighbor, expressed support for the police action, noting that the presence of the clubhouse had long made residents uneasy. Across the street, Faith Tabernacle Church remained silent during the raid. Later, Pastor Rocky Dula said they had never had trouble with the Pagans directly, but prayed for peace in the community. According to investigators, the Yukon seen leaving the Newton crime scene was traced back to the Pagans Clubhouse in Lenoir. It was eventually discovered in Goose Creek, South Carolina. Forensic teams combed through the vehicle and the property, gathering any trace of evidence that could link individuals to the deadly shooting. Though the direct connection between the Pagans and the Outlaws shooting remains under investigation, officials stated the raid was part of a broader effort to dismantle organized motorcycle crime in the region. The Department of Justice classifies the Pagans as one of the Big Four outlaw motorcycle gangs in the United States, alongside the Hells Angels, the Outlaws, and the Bandidos. Their ranks are secretive, their structure paramilitary, and their reach spans from the East Coast to parts of the South. In North Carolina, authorities say the Pagans have grown more active in recent years, with suspected links to weapons trafficking and organized violence. The Outlaws, who were on the receiving end of the June 8th shooting, are themselves no strangers to law enforcement. In 2010, the ATF raided their clubhouse in Newton, blasting a hole through its walls to enter. That time, too, no charges stuck. The tension between these rival groups is old, often generational, and always dangerous. Law enforcement walks a thin line, seeking to prevent bloodshed without sparking more of it. As of now, no one has been charged with murder. The SBI, the FBI, and local departments say the investigation is ongoing. The shattered glass at the Pagans Clubhouse has been swept up. The Yukon sits in an evidence yard. Families near both clubhouses try to return to normal, but for them, the roar of a bike engine at night will never sound the same again. In Charlotte, where city lights often disguise the dark undercurrents of crime and conflict, the events of July 2025 have left a mark. Motorcycle clubs are more than leather and chrome. They're a culture, a code, and sometimes a cause for fear. Whether justice finds its way through the tangle of loyalty, silence, and outlaw pride remains to be seen. For now, the streets are quiet, but the story, like the engines that power those bikes, is far from idle. But time, like asphalt under worn-out tires, doesn't stand still. By mid-August, whispers in the underground grew louder. A confidential informant, known only to investigators, mentioned a name that hadn't yet come up. Raymond Buzz Keller, a regional enforcer for the Pagans with ties to both Lenoir and Goose Creek. Keller's name had surfaced in prior investigations, but never stuck, until now. Surveillance footage from a gas station near the scene of the shooting showed a man matching his description just 12 minutes after the gunfire in Newton, purchasing fuel and glancing repeatedly over his shoulder. Law enforcement intensified pressure. Search warrants were quietly issued, phones tapped. Two more properties connected to the Pagans, one in Hickory, another on the outskirts of Spartanburg, were raided in unannounced early morning operations. At both locations, authorities recovered modified weapons, burner phones, and insignia, colors, cuts, patches, all meticulously documented as part of what the DOJ called an emerging conspiracy. Still, no murder weapon, no confession, just silence. Detectives familiar with motorcycle club culture understood the code. Omerta on wheels, as one officer put it. Loyalty ran deeper than fear, and fear ran deeper than most people outside these circles could grasp. In club life, speaking out wasn't just betrayal, it was suicide. Meanwhile, Jordan Cassell's funeral had come and gone. Hundreds of bikers rolled through the Charlotte outskirts in a roaring, chrome-lined procession. There were no colors shown, only black leather. No media allowed. His mother, Eleanor Cassell, spoke briefly to reporters from her porch days later. Her voice cracked, but her words cut sharp. "My son chose that life, but he didn't choose to die like a dog in the street. Someone knows what happened. Someone needs to be man enough to speak." The pressure mounts. By late August, federal prosecutors began assembling a task force, multi-jurisdictional, with mandates to investigate organized motorcycle violence across the Carolinas. Quiet meetings in windowless rooms outlined RICO strategies, cell tower triangulations, and the cross-referencing of gun serial numbers with ATF registries. But all leads kept coming back to that one night in Newton, that Yukon, that single moment of chaos that had left one man dead, another wounded, and a rivalry reignited. In private, law enforcement officials expressed a troubling possibility. This wasn't retaliation, it was escalation. Across the state line in South Carolina, two known Outlaws associates were hospitalized after a bar fight outside Somerville turned ugly. No arrests were made, but witnesses described a group of men in black vests, no patches, who arrived on bikes and left before police arrived. The implication was clear. This was no longer a whodunit. This was a powder keg. Between God and Gritback in Lenoir, Pastor Rocky Dula began holding nightly vigils. Attendance grew, mostly older residents, young mothers, veterans, people who had nothing to do with motorcycles, but everything to lose if violence crept back into their neighborhoods. In one sermon, the pastor's voice rang over the quiet pews. Peace is not the absence of sound, it's the absence of fear. But fear had already taken hold. Schools near both clubhouses increased security. City council members in Newton introduced ordinances to limit the operation of known gang properties. Legal challenges from civil liberties groups were swift, citing property rights and freedom of assembly. But the public sentiment leaned toward action, not caution. The SBI, tight-lipped as ever, confirmed only that the investigation remains active and ongoing, with further arrests expected. No one said the word war, but in the quiet corners of law enforcement briefings and outlaw gatherings alike, it lingered. By early September, the game shifted. With no direct murder charges filed, the case was threatening to go cold. But behind closed doors, one of the most aggressive tactics in federal playbooks was quietly activated: infiltration. The Bureau had eyes on a former pagan, Tyson "Chops" Redding, who'd flipped years ago after a weapons trafficking case in Virginia. He'd been in witness protection ever since, but now, after an ugly divorce and a revoked stipend, he was back on the radar, and angry. Angry at the life, the lies, the club that left him for dead. With pressure and a well-negotiated deal, he agreed to go back under. Within 3 weeks, Redding had made contact with a lesser chapter of the Pagans operating outside Rock Hill. He played it cool, dyed hair, fake name, fresh cut. He started low, helping run errands, fixing bikes, and talking old stories with new faces. What he didn't tell them was that his belt buckle was bugged, his burner phone was tapped, and every beer shared in the garage was logged into evidence files marked Operation Silent Chrome. And then came the break. One night during a late run between Rock Hill and Lenoir, a patch member, drunk, tired, and far too loose-lipped, muttered something that changed everything. Buzz should have torched that Yukon. Cassell bled too fast, left too hot. They weren't supposed to shoot. The words were caught, recorded, time-stamped, cataloged. Hit like if the story pulled you in, and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next.